The final bell rang, ending the lightweight championship. And after the scores were tallied, the referee raised the hand of the victor before both fighters exited the ring with trophies in hand. Next was, by far, the most anticipated fight of the night. The welterweight class, 147 pounds of drama that matched quickness against power, brains against brawn, the hunter and the hunted. As Lynn and Wawa climbed the few steps up into the ring from opposite corners, palpable excitement segued into a conspicuous surge in crowd energy. Before Wawa's name was even announced, the crowd began chanting his name, as if on cue, somewhat muffled at first, but in a moment of collective behavior, the hymn swelled quickly, startlingly clear and louder with each chorus, until, at last, relentless, concerted, perpetual waves of sound rippled freely throughout the arena. It was a defining moment in the truest sense, like none that had come before. One that's recalled wistfully and recounted passionately for years thereafter, invoking myth and legend with every conveyance. This was his moment, the last fight of the final tournament of an extraordinary year. The deafening tribute continued for almost a minute, but it was not until Wawa humbly stepped to the center of the ring and waved his acceptance that the fervor of the tendentious crowd finally subsided. Lynn stood alone and motionless, almost numb in an arena full of partisan fanatics. Through no fault of his own, the malevolent throng was unanimously against him, wanting nothing but a knockout to quench their thirst for blood. His blood. Dad felt the venom too, sensing the dread and fear that Lynn was certainly enduring due to the raucous legion of Wawa disciples. He massaged Lynn's shoulders, hoping to relieve the tension of the building stress. He was in full fight or flight mode, and at this very point in time, wished he were somewhere else. Anywhere else but here. It was a moment that he'd seen coming for some time, but it arrived all too quickly, seemingly without his permission. And now he could do nothing but pray that it would pass him by. And when the bell at ringside rang, the crowd quieted. Butterflies flooded Lynn's belly anew as the announcer's voice filled the arena in high-fidelity definition.
And in the red corner, from Eureka Boutique Club, Lynn and Wawa.
A modicum of applause followed, mostly from the Warika section, as Lynn took one step forward and raised his right glove above his head, then returned to Dad's eager massage. When he looked down toward his teammates at ringside, he saw Eric nodding confidently. But it didn't help to calm his nerves. The announcer continued.
And in the black corner,
The Wawa faithful erupted again in full fervor, and the chant began anew, this time with even more ardor. Again, the crowd shouted in precise unison, louder than before, as if the former chorus had been a mere rehearsal for this one. Higher and higher their voices rose, with an almost cult-like character, chiming in frenetic accord on behalf of their champion. The announcer tried to continue, but the PA system was no match for the ongoing bedlam. The chaotic scene was bordering on pandemonium. Wawa looked almost helpless in his attempt to settle the fractious crowd. But again he tried, and with an affirming wave, the sea of adherents calmed just enough for the announcer to be heard.
and in the blue corner, the Mulder Boys Club,
Applause erupted from every corner of the Coliseum. So much so that when the bell rang to start the fight, it was heard only by the two boxers in the ring. They skipped to the center of the ring, touched gloves, and began to spar. Fundamentally, Lynn was much more orthodox in his approach than Wawa, presenting an upright posture as he danced in a circle to his left. Lynn was certainly taller, which translated to an advantage in reach. It was undoubtedly a page out of his dad's classical training. To jab and move, a strategy to keep his shorter and more powerful opponent as far away as possible. Wawa's boxing style was one of pure brute force, and without the advantage of a seasoned coach in his corner, he would have to rely on an opportunity. He pushed the action, pursuing Lynn as he danced around the ring, but couldn't get close enough to unleash a punch. As the action of the first round continued, Lynn was able to stay away, landing a few jabs in the process, but none could have been described as doing any harm. The bell rang to end the round, and the fighters returned to their corners. The Warwick faithful cheered above a now rather subdued crowd, excited at the unexpected way the round had unfolded. Young Eric reflected on whether his words had taken root with Wawa, or whether his brother Lynn was a better fighter than had been presumed. "Lynn, you won that round." Dad stifled a proud smile as he continued barking advice to his son. "You did a great job with that jab. Just keep moving. Stay away from his right hand. Don't let him get in close and trap you in the corner or against the ropes. Jab and move, jab and move. You have more technique than he does. You're confusing him. Keep doing just what you're doing." The 10-second whistle signaled the impending bell to start the second round. Lynn took a deep breath amid the cheers from his teammates. Wawa stood waiting in the opposing corner, looking a bit more focused and determined than when the fight had started. The bell rang and the two fighters danced to the middle and touched gloves. Again, Lynn circled away out of Wawa's reach, landing jabs and earning points, while Wawa stalked after him, always the aggressor, waiting for his moment to strike his prey. Lynn completed circle after circle, jab after jab, while Wawa waited. Halfway through the round, the crowd noise had all but disappeared, perhaps muted by a blanket of disbelief of what they were witnessing. Only the Warwick section shouted, giddy at the prospect of Lynn actually winning. But then, with 15 seconds left in the round, Lynn's circle took him a bit too close to the ropes, opening the door of opportunity for Wawa to walk through. Wawa lunged forward with all his weight and power, a blow destined for the left side of Lynn's face. Had it landed, it would have been a devastating punch. But Lynn reacted just enough for the blow to glance off his cheek, and he held Wawa tight as the two fell together against the ropes. The hungry crowd erupted, thinking this was Wawa's moment. But the bell sounded to end the round, and the referee separated the panting fighters and sent them to their respective corners. "Lynn, you had another good round. You won that one too, whether or not the judges saw it that way. One more round. Jab and move, jab and move. Be aware of his right hand. That's his only punch. Stay away from him, this fight is yours. He doesn't think you can beat him, but you can. You are beating him. Just stay alert and keep doing what you're doing." Lynn was breathing heavily now, perhaps more labored because of his asthma, but he heard every word his dad was telling him. The whistle blew, and he took several of the deepest breaths of his life. Wawa stood waiting across the ring, his affable facade now absent. These were uncharted waters for him. He knew it would take the sum of all of his talents now to finish what he had set out to do. The bell rang to start the final round of the season. The fighters met in the middle of the ring, but this time there was no ceremonial touching of the gloves in good sportsmanship. Instead, Wawa hurled a crushing right hand, connecting squarely just below Lynn's left eye before he could even get his hands up. His eye swelled almost immediately, but not before a second blow from Wawa crash landed on the right side of his head. Lynn jerked back on his heels, attempting to withdraw from the unexpected onslaught of flying leather. He stumbled backward toward the borders of the ring, with Wawa in full pursuit. As the two fell into the ropes, Dad yelled for him to move, but Wawa now had him exactly where he wanted him all along. A barrage of punches followed, eliciting a roar from the mob of partisans. Lynn tried sliding off the ropes, but Wawa was just too strong to allow him to escape. The relentless punches rained down on Lynn, who did his best to deflect some of them, but the majority found their target. One after another, the blows came, and as the round wore on, it seemed as though it might never end. Wawa's mastery was now on full display, parading it in the form of an unmerciful beating. Lynn suddenly found himself in a strange, adrenaline-filled reality where he didn't hear the crowd or feel the punches anymore. It was a slow-motion world in which he found himself, able to see the punches coming but simply unable to make a move to stop them. And just before he reached the state of total enlightenment, he heard a bell. And then a man in a black and white shirt escorted him back to the waiting arms of his coach and father. I'm proud of you, son. Dad hugged him, fully aware of the beating he had just endured. His head was fuzzy, his legs were wobbly, his face was bruised and puffy, his back was burned and abraded from the time he had spent on the ropes. Dad snapped the pneumonia capsule and waved it under Lynn's nose, which seemed to improve his state of mind. Slowly, he regained his senses enough to hear the cheering crowd, though the Warwick faithful seemed a bit dispirited. But when he saw Eric started clapping, and the rest of the team joined in too. Wawa came over to Lynn's corner and, in the spirit of sportsmanship, commended him as an able opponent. "Toughest fight I had all year, Lynn. Good fight." Wawa tapped him on the head with his glove and headed back to the center of the ring to await the announcement of the decision. When Lynn joined him there, the announcer called Wawa's name, and the referee lifted his hand to enthusiastic applause. The two shook hands, accepted their trophies, and turned to their respective corners to exit the ring. Then, the chants returned and echoed throughout the arena, following them all the way to the musty locker room. It was the last fight for either of them, and while Lynn might have wished it would have turned out better, he had finished a close fight against what many remember as a legendary boxer. And in the years since, many have wondered what has become of Wawa. Certainly, he had too much talent to fail. His seemed to be a bright future destined for greatness. But his whereabouts now are a mystery, his story a blank page. But there is a bigger mystery that remains from that night, a mystery that will probably never be solved. A young boy asked a favor on behalf of what he perceived to be a threat to his brother's safety. Did Wawa grant his request? Was that why the fight was so close as it was? Or was it Lynn's own talent that was brought to bear in his bid to dethrone a prodigious boxer, perhaps forever snuffing out the legend of Wawa Trahan? Maybe both are true. Maybe neither. Maybe this story should be called The Legend of Lynn Adams.